dynamic of contemporary movements have set themselves. Sometimes, these radical emancipatory movements have been punctual and sometimes delayed, sometimes ephemeral in appearance, and sometimes subterranean in effect. But their stubbornly persistent emergence and re-emergence signifies the development of new forms of conflict and struggle, of the popular or subaltern social groups and classes. The new century seems to be characterized by a progressive accumulation of accelerated political cycles on a variety of terrains and in different geopolitical regions, as if it were only through the exhaustion of spirit in one of its incarnations that it might gather the strength to spring forth afresh elsewhere, clothed in different garbs, yet cut from the same cloth. These movements of resistance and revolt may not have issued in many unambiguous victories. Their failures may not even have been of an important type, and the significance of whatever modest successes these movements may have enjoyed in their own moments has been continually found wanting, when measured against standards derived from previous and wholly different political conjunctures. At the beginning of each upsurge of struggles, it has not been difficult to hear voices hopefully declaring the end of a long season of defeats, and the opening of a new chapter in the universal history of the forward march of popular movements. Retrospect, even at a short remove, seems quickly to deflate such enthusiasms, seeing in what was yesterday's novelty merely an eventual exception that does not disprove the continuing rule of the party of order. Indeed, in some cases, it even appears to have been strengthened, particularly when xenophobic, racist, and nationalist mobilizations or revivals of the far right have been able to fill the vacuum left by the defeat or demobilization of emancipatory projects. The spectacular eruption and subsequent fierce repression of revolutionary initiatives in the Arab Spring constitutes the most tragic and significant example of this negative dialectic. The brief flowering of the Occupy movement in the heart of the imperialist powers in the early years of the second decade of the century, and its equally rapid dispersion in both figurative and literal senses, followed something of the same pattern, albeit on a lesser scale. In a longer-term perspective, the sequential election of progressive governments in Venezuela, Brazil, and Bolivia raised hopes for the inauguration of a socialism for the 21st century. In each case, initial enthusiasms more or less gradually subsided when they were not abandoned, as those movements and their domestic and international supporters confronted the sober realities and contradictions of governing what remained of societies fundamentally structured by capitalist social relations, of socialization just as much of production. In a similar fashion, the hopes of the European left have migrated over the last decades, with specific, nationally based political formations appearing to represent, at least for a season, a paradigm for a more general continental recomposition of progressive forces. These exemplary instances have included Rifondazione Comunista in Italy, at the height of the movement of movements in the early years of the century; Die Linke in Germany, in the wake of the movements against the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq at the midpoint of the first decade; the foundation of the Nouveau Parti Anticapitaliste in France in 2009, embodying hopes for leftist recomposition that was soon dashed; Syriza's revolt against the creditors in Greece, before its capitulation to the Troika's dictates in 2015; Podemos's ongoing traversal of the contradictions of the austerity-riven and disintegrating Spanish nation-state, or the